This is episode number 5 of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Welcome to the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. My name is Jeff Thornton, tech entrepreneur and fitness enthusiast, alongside Michael Anders and Jason Sani. Each week we bring you an inspiring person or message related to our 4 pillars of success: manifestation, business, fitness, and nutrition. Thank you for allowing us to join you on your journey. Now let's get started.
What's up? Welcome to Feed Me, Fuel Me, episode 5. Today, the topic we're going to be talking about, focusing on, is PEDs.
Dun, dun, dun.
Performance enhancing drugs.
Mm.
So, hot topic. You see this a lot in sports, and a lot of controversy tied into if people think it's fair. Is it an unfair advantage? We've seen it in the UFC recently with people like, Brock Lesnar and John Jones, some of the biggest names around.
Russia's about to get booted out of the Olympics over
Yeah,
it.
some on a major level. And you see it in, more common everyday sports like baseball, where, I know people that play and say that, the people that are busted is only a small fraction of actually how many people are doing it one way or another. So, I want to talk kind of about just the opinions of what we think about it, what it is, and is it an unfair advantage? Is it something that should be reprimanded a little bit more? Should there be a little more leniency to it? So let's tee it off. There's what's your take? Did you see? Actually, let's talk about your history. Like growing up, what was if you were around people from on the athletic level, were you aware of people that were doing it around you?
Yeah,
And if so, what was your opinion on it? Did you consider it?
sure.
And
I
so
mean,
on.
we had guys that were suspected of using PEDs, and I know about the time I was leaving the Air Force Academy. We actually had a huge steroid scandal throughout the academy and a lot of athletic teams, and it was just kind of overlooked, I guess. It was kind of just accepted, like, old buddy's on the sauce, but he's a hell of a player and he lifts a lot of weight and hits real hard. So we just kind of left it at that. Nobody asked any questions or really dove too much further into it than that. And then as I made my transition out of college ball into bodybuilding, steroids is everywhere, and especially at the professional level and the non-tested shows like in the NPC and stuff like that. You'll find it being used a lot, and in terms of recreational use and sports like bodybuilding, if you want to call it a sport, there's not a whole lot of money on the line. There's not a whole lot of money to be made in the sport unless you're up there trying to compete for the Mr. Olympia every year. And even then, all your money comes from sponsorships and whatnot, not necessarily from competing.
Mhm.
So I guess my outlook on steroid use, I recognize that the public outcry against it is because a lot of the people that have celebrity status and are using it are also role models for kids. And it's really scary when you see high school kids diving into that stuff, so young. Um, but at the professional level, when everybody's trying to make it, and whether or not your mortgage is paid and food is in the fridge is based on your performance. I mean, that's kind of the realm that you're in. I won't say that I'm okay with it, but at the same time, I understand them using it.
Certainly. I mean, like you said, when money's on the line, you see something that's competitive that's going to give you an up or an advantage on someone else. Like you can see why people would justify using it. And I think people are always looking for that extra strength. And it's like if you see somebody that's on your team or somebody that you're up with, it's not like you're going to go, rat them out or
Sure.
throw them in if it's supporting you on the other end. If it's kind of like a don't ask, don't
Right.
tell type of thing. Um, I definitely have seen it around me as much. I think a lot of people, there's definitely people that are blind to the whole idea of it.
Right.
And it's one of those things that a lot of people are quick to jump to accusations if they see people that are performing this other level. And that's another thing that is like you see so common. It's like, oh, that person must be on steroids. You see it
Sure.
all over the internet. You see
Right.
somebody with a good physique.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that happened to me. I hit a growth spurt and just like dedication to lifting, and people accused me and like would ask me over and over again if I did anything like that. And it
Yeah.
was like, part of you takes it as a compliment that your work's being noticed, but another part is like,
The
to
negative,
shortchange
it's that
the
negative
yeah,
attention. You don't want that.
like I heard a quote from I watched Adrian Peterson get interviewed, and people were like, "How did this guy bounce back so quick from his injury?" And
Mhm.
the guy's just like a freak of nature, and he had a good answer to it. Like he just kind of people were saying that you're being accused a lot of using PEDs and so on. He kind of just laughed it off, and he's like, sure, that fuels me that much, that much more to work that much harder. But at the same time, that's a compliment. If people think that my God-given skills and talent that I have,
Right.
you know,
You gotta have PEDs
are on
to do it.
on that top level.
Well, I think it's funny you talk about your experience of being accused. I went through a period of about 3 or 4 months at the tail end of high school where I had weight training as a class and then track practice after school, and between track practice and making it home for dinner, I would stop by Gold's Gym and train again. So I was hitting 3 days that last semester of high school, and I would come home, I would sleep, my mom would wake me up, I would eat, and I would go back to sleep. And I'll never forget, I came home and my parents were just getting after each other. And I walk in the living room, I'm like, what's going on? And my dad just cuts off the conversation with my mom, turns to me, he's like, are you fucking using steroids? All you do is train and sleep. And it was kind of eye opening for me because I would never thought that my dad would think I was on the juice,
Mhm.
you know. Um, but it's really interesting as you start to hit these, big strides in performance, or you hit a growth spurt or whatever. Just the immediate response based on what's going on in the media and stuff like that. You hit these highs and lows throughout your performance life, where oh, that's got to be the answer. That's why he's doing so well. That's why they're doing such big things. And um, what people don't realize, whether you're using it or not, you still have to put in the work.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys that are on the sauce and still look like shit and aren't, getting on anybody's leaderboard anytime soon. You still have to do the work. You still got to eat, you still got to train, you still got to sleep, you got to recover. So in my opinion, steroids only help the gifts that you already have.
Right.
But if you're not an athlete already, steroids is not going to make you an athlete.
Mhm.
If you're not already strong, steroids is not going to make you stronger. You know what I mean? To a noticeable extent.
Mhm.
There's you got to have a baseline before it catapults you to wherever. And that's the part that I think a lot of people just neglect and just outright ignore when it comes to using steroids.
Mhm. And I think people, because I got the same reaction as you guys as when I was in college, cut down all this weight and then started getting ripped, like starting to get more vascular. And people were like, this guy, you got to be on cocaine or you got to be on the juice. And it's like, I know you don't do drugs. I don't do. So I was like, it's one of those things like you said, you don't know whether to take it as a compliment or it's like, hey, is somebody really undermining all the hard work you put in? But I come at it two ways. Like from a competitive aspect, for me, I think like I'm against it for a competitive aspect. If it's an even playing field, like you think baseball, all those guys, everybody wants to see home runs,
Mm-hmm.
but then everybody wants to complain how they're getting them, right? But then the moment the home runs stop, it's like, oh, why aren't we seeing the type of performance we were seeing back in the day, So, but I mean, you see a double-edged sword because if out of competition, I think it's fine because for me, nobody's really harming you, but they're only harming themselves if they're
Right.
taking steroids. If you want to be a better bodybuilder, a better CrossFit competitor, and you're not trying to get to that level and just want to look good, I say, hey, hell, go for it. It's like, pick your poison. You're only going to affect yourself. But that's my stance on it because
Sure.
I think otherwise it's one of those topics that even if you do steroids, it's not just something you throw in a bucket. Like he's on steroids, but there's the science behind steroids. There's a cycle process that people go through of the drugs that bulk you, that cut you down, that lean you out, and do all these various things. And I think people just think it's like, oh, you just take a shot and you're gonna blow up. You're like, no, you got to understand DECA is gonna blow you up, or things like that, or clenbuterol is gonna trim you down. So it's part of like, come if you're gonna bash it, come from a base of understanding what it is first, and then how people are using it for both performance and in their personal lives, and just like then you can make your judgment off of that. Just don't come with I don't think a blanket statement
Yeah.
like everybody who does it is a motherfucker, you know?
Right. Well, I think baseball is a very good example of where steroids don't necessarily matter, from the standpoint that yes, that added strength will put inches on your long ball. However, steroids do not help you connect
Right, the
with the
hand-eye.
ball in the first place. There's no legitimate statistical evidence to show that steroids improve eye-hand coordination. So you have to have that first. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But once they get a hold of that ball, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
Just-
And I mean, it can
But
help
that's what
with
that's what people pay.
fatigue. It helps people bounce back quick. I think. I mean, that's a cool thing to touch on is why is it that somebody would want to take in what people do? I've been firsthand. You know, I had a roommate actually. I mean, I've had friends that I've actually helped inject and all because I've
Okay.
been really close to it. Which I mean, I was like, it's not something that I'm going to do, but I've seen it firsthand. You know, people that are training, you know, to get to that next level, whatever. Because I've seen people go the junior college route and tear it up where it's not going to be tested as much, and they get some attention, and then you know they hope that they can rise to the occasion. But hey, that's going to give them a scholarship, you know, pay for school.
Right.
Who knows, something further. And so you have to see what it does. And what I noticed firsthand is seeing people, and I've had conversations with you know many people that have done it. It's like it's this extra energy that they have that you know you can go in and it changes the environment in your body to where you can recover faster. It's not your strength is at a higher level. You still have to put in that work, but you know from something like baseball where it does benefit you is you know if you're fatigued, your hand-eye coordination is going to be off. If you know you're not going to be able to make those quicker decisions, this and that, and so it helps that type of energy level
Sure.
that much. And so it's like that's why. And you know it's funny. It's like people are abusing you know what you want to define as steroids, even quote unquote like smart drugs, things like Adderall and Provigil, these
Right.
things that you're
Nootropics.
seeing, and these nootropics that you're seeing people in Wall Street, people in Ivy League schools are doing. They're definitely compromising and sacrificing, you know, long-term health to be able to get these short-term types of benefits and so on. But it's something that people are doing on a regular basis. And it's I think a lot of it comes down to this like energy crisis. So at the same time, people want more energy to be able to do more, to get more faster. And it's the generation that we're in, this instant gratification type of thing that, you know, goes to shortcuts. At the same time, I've seen all these people that have gotten benefits from it and then watched a lot of those benefits go away at the same time too, where it's just like, you know, all that work that was done is quick to go away. And that's, I mean, that's this whole issue that I think we're in is like everybody wants a shortcut
Right.
to something. And it's like,
Well, I think what's the statistic I read that after so long on the juice, and we'll get off the topic of steroids because it's definitely not PEDs is not exclusive to steroid use. There's a lot of other things like Adderall and whatnot. But you know, after a cycle of steroids, you know, long-term users can experience 20 to 40% decreases in strength and performance.
Wow, that big?
Huge. Yeah. And so it's a very, regardless of how long you've been using it in the window of life that you're going to be actually training in, it's a very short window. And I think people, you know, if you're going to use steroids, you need to understand that the gains that you're going to make will go away once you stop using. It's not something that you take and lasts, you know, and you know, anything that alters your body chemistry, no matter what, once you remove it from your system, your body's going to do whatever it needs to do to come back to homeostasis. Because while you're using, any of that stuff, you're out of balance. That is not your body's natural pH, if you will.
Mhm.
And you're just going to do whatever it has to do to come back to neutral.
And that can be a challenge at times. And you see people when you deal with that, it's the idea that some people become dependent on those types of things, and whether it's like an addiction that they become dependent on that extra type of energy that they have, and some of it starts to diminish after time. But when they do remove themselves from it, their body's going to try to adapt to that type of environment, and there's usually that down cycle, and so there's obviously all the negative byproducts that come along with it. So it's not just try it out, get the benefits. There's things that I mean and that's one thing. I don't know. Some people look at the risk reward factor and feel like, hey, this is maybe worth it or whatever the case. Um, and it's hard to argue against some of the people that have done it. And again, it's not always. I think the term steroids is looking at guys just getting big and buff and jacked and
Right.
type of muscle. I mean, but then you have guys like Lance Armstrong
Hmm.
and some of these other guys like cyclists and athletes who are doing it because they're just addicted to high performance and
Right.
they're addicted to that feeling of winning, and it's something they feel like if they're out of that zone, it's like they're part of them is dying or not
Yeah.
alive type of thing.
Well, performance is one of those things that you can't just let die. You know what I mean? You've spent so much time and put forth so much effort to perform at such a level. That's a hard thing to let go of. And when you get to that level with assistance, and you no longer have that crutch, well, what do you do then?
Mhm.
And I think that's a huge part of the depression and a lot of the psychological issues that come after steroid use. It's not necessarily a byproduct of your body chemistry, but more so the self-image that you have that came with usage. And now that you don't have that and you're not able to do the things that you used to do, um, that's when the negative psychological effects start to take place because you know that you can't do the things that you're now known for doing
Mhm.
anymore. Um, and you create this, you have these discussions in your head where you perceive everyone else to think that their expectation of you is to still perform at that level. And so you've now put yourself on a pedestal that doesn't necessarily exist. And you've led yourself to believe that that's what everybody else expects of you when that's not necessarily the case either. So now you've increased your stress level, um, your distress level exponentially with these um, fabricated thoughts that aren't really there, and that's where people run into trouble when it's all over with.
Mhm.
You see a good example of that if you guys have seen that the 30 for 30 documentaries, which I'm addicted to. I can't get enough of those, but the one on Brian Bosworth, which
Yes.
Yeah.
so he openly admitted that he did that and it was kind of like an understanding, like do it during practice and so on, and then like if around testing, just get it out of your system type of thing or whatever. Obviously, it's regulated a lot more now, but like that little cycle that he did made for some of the most entertaining college football in history. If you watch this guy that just blew up at this crazy level, which he was an incredibly gifted athlete before any of that, as he was in high school or so, and that just took it to the next level. But you saw how much that blew up his head and his ego. And if you haven't seen that documentary on, ESPN, it's worth watching just to kind of see the mental side. He thought he became a different person completely than who he was. Um, so I mean that's one level of it, and then touching on, and I've seen a lot of conversation with CrossFit, from the physiques where it's funny, people that don't know a lot about it like automatically assume all these guys are on steroids, and I see this so much on the internet, and people are like, oh, look at these guys' physiques, and so it's like it just shows you that there's an option to create an optimal hormone environment without this type of stuff. But that brings up the conversation. It's like, okay, now that money's on the line, there's these competitions. The winner of CrossFit Games is going to get $275,000 this year. The guy under that's going to get like 50, and the top 20 guys are going to make a decent amount of money, plus all the sponsorship. So it's like you'd see why these guys maybe would want to try to do that type of thing. Do you have any opinion on I
Well,
guess people's why why people are making all these accusations and
I think that with regards to CrossFit, it's not so much the use of PEDs for strength necessarily, because it's so um, concentric and fast twitch. So a lot of that, a lot of these guys are already blessed with. However, it's the volume that they train with, versus bodybuilding where you just completely blow up a muscle group a day, stereotypically, and you let it rest for 6, 7 days and then you do it again. Um, in CrossFit, you're using every muscle group every single day with a ton of volume, especially at that level. And really, the only variable that you're changing is um, the the mode of metabolic training. It's either going to be a short burner or a strength workout or a long chipper. That's more aerobically demanding. Um, but either way, I think that when you watch the way these guys train, yeah, they're training hard and they're training a lot, but the majority of them are training really, really smart, right? And when you're using different energy systems and different workouts throughout the day, every day, you can sustain that volume. If you really look at somebody's, one of these games athletes' training logs day in, day out, whether they're very systematic about it or they're just kind of on the whiteboard trying to figure out what they haven't done in a while and what they suck at, you know, there's certain um, common themes in the way that they train. So yeah, they're putting in a work and they're putting in a lot of it, but when it's done intelligently, uh, PEDs isn't really a factor, in my opinion.
Mm.
That's not to say that some of them aren't using it, but it doesn't, there's not enough. These guys aren't doing anything out of the ordinary, in my mind, from an academic master's degree in human performance standpoint that would suggest that it's rampant in the CrossFit community.
Even from a recovery standpoint, you don't feel like.
Because you can train, you can train, beat down, and all that kind of good stuff. But again, if you do it smartly, you're still able to achieve, uh, better performance over the long term. Everybody has shitty days, and I guarantee you none of them have amazing workouts every single day. Some of them you just gotta, just like yesterday, I did a workout and, it was like just throw intensity out the window and just suck it up and get through it, So that shit still happens, but you can incorporate the element of recovery as long as you're challenging different energy systems from one workout to the next.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
I think that's a topic we should dive into, is this idea of overtraining compared to under recovery. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
There's, I've had conversations, quite a few conversations in regards, like, is there overtraining? And it's like, I don't believe that there is if you're recovering at an optimal standpoint, but recovery at an optimal standpoint, if you're training that much, might be getting in a nap, which is not realistic for a lot of people. Having good quality sleep hygiene and taking care of it, and recovering optimally so that your body is able to recover from those workouts and bounce back. So, that's something we can dive into another time, but I think it's a fun topic to discuss.
But to answer your point, in terms as far as CrossFit is concerned and the usage of PEDs, I think you'd be really naive to say that it's not out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it's as rampant as other athletic communities at that level.
I'd agree with that. Have you seen that that documentary, Bigger, Faster, Stronger?
Absolutely.
I still haven't seen that
It's
yet.
good because I think they take a really unbiased standpoint on the topic. They go from the level of talking to bodybuilders or even powerlifters and saying, hey, this guy takes it, this guy doesn't take it. What are your viewpoints? And then you can sort of put together your own assumption based on the facts that are given. But what was interesting to me about that documentary, and ever since you checked it out, was that he's saying that the thing about PEDs is that every Olympian or every Olympic athlete you see out there today, they're on some type of PED. It's just that the scientists are always a step ahead of the testing process in a way. So
the athlete is ahead.
the athlete's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever they're taking at this point is that by next year, yeah, it may be a banned substance, but at this point now, it's not even heard of, but it's still running through their systems. What do you feel about that? Because I think that was an interesting point that they brought up. It makes you think because the
They make it, they're Olympic Training Committee now is the list is so long of what you're not allowed to take that I mean you can't even get a protein powder off the shelf at GNC without popping on a test. So everything it seems like these days is a PED.
But what they're testing for now is a little bit different. So here's something that's progressed over time is where before they were trying to test to see if things were present in your system. Now what I'm noticing more is they're looking for alarming higher than average levels of things. And so these it's not just testosterone. It can be adrenaline. It can be your hormone levels. It can be, all these natural chemistry reactions that are going on in the body. If it looks slightly abnormal, that draws them into.
But here's the problem with
point.
that though, because when you look at people that are able to do these amazing physical feats, isn't it logical to think that some of those levels are going to be higher than the norm anyway?
You would think so, but I mean that's what they're drawing to conclusion. If they have a baseline, for example, they can say that, average testosterone is, like 500, 600 for a male and is like
Right.
mid to late 20s. If that is closer to the 800, 900 level, it's just going to draw a flag, and then
Sure.
they're going to go into it further.
Well, see, that would be my question. I'd like to do some more research on that. Is where is the baseline?
Yeah.
Is the baseline at the Olympic level, or are we just talking about average Joe human being?
Yeah.
Right. Because when you train as much as these athletes do at the intensity with which they train, your, you know, your hormone levels are going to be naturally higher anyway. If you take blood pre and post workout, your testosterone and stuff like that is going to be much higher than it was before you started training. You know, so when you're talking about training like that day in and day out, that becomes your new normal, right? So I'd be interested to find out what the baseline actually is for so what raises the flag.
Right, and that was that was interesting that you guys have, spoke about that topic because on that documentary as well, Bigger, Faster, Stronger, they mentioned that there's no baseline from what they were testing for testosterone. So they would go into a doctor's office and say, "Hey, test my testosterone levels," and the doctor would come back and say, "He's like, I think I'm low on testosterone," and the doctor would say, "Yeah, you are lower on testosterone. Here's something. Here's an anabolic to help you boost it back up."
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying you could do that on an everyday basis because there's no from person to person, there's no baseline because some people can be at a higher level, some can be at a lower level, but there's nothing that says 400 or 500 is a standard testosterone level. And that was just something that it was interesting. I was like, what? So it makes you think, like,
Mm-hmm.
what are these numbers? What can you base these numbers off of now?
That's powerful, and that's something I've heard from people that essentially, I've guys in their mid 30s that are dependent on testosterone because they started taking it at an early age, and you have guys that are going in and tested, and that's a good point. I have low testosterone. Well, I mean, what does that mean? And it puts us in this big mess that we're in the pharmaceutical industry that it's going to benefit the doctor if they can give you a script for something, and if that doctor doesn't do it, another one will, and so I mean, it's funny to look at averages. I mean, if you look at it, right now more than ever, it's something like 1 in 4 men after the age of 30 have lower than average testosterone for what that means. And what that means is like, lower than where a common level should be in their early 20s. And that affects energy, it affects their strength, their libido. And so there's all these different factors that play a role into that. So I just think it's interesting of really how you define that. And that's tough. It's a tough way. It's tough to look at it because that testosterone hormone for men is like the life hormone that makes them competitive, that makes them want to the mating characteristic, the hunting characteristic. That
It's the thrive hormone.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, we're running out of time here on the show, so let's just go ahead and consolidate opinion and fact. Where do you stand on the usage of PEDs in the professional arena? We won't even talk about recreation.
Yeah, from an entertainment perspective, I feel like there's always going to be an argument for people to see it. It's just that I don't think it's ever going to be something that I would completely agree with because from like from an athlete perspective, competing against somebody else, it's always going to say like, well, that's not fair type of thing. And it's going to lack, I think it just lacks the respect of the sport process. And I feel like things could possibly change, but, it's something that I think there's always, and you see it like with fighters, they're like, oh, I don't want to fight this guy if he's potentially got this extra advantage on me. And then you see at the other end, like just recently the John Jones, Cormier or whatever, who was going to fight. Yeah, he's like, I don't care. Can I sign a paper and I'll fight him? So then it's like you're also going to have guys like that say, take what you want. I'm still ready to go into battle.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's kind of like at your own discretion. I don't know if I would sign, any sort of like sheet or act to say like let's accept it. But from an entertainment perspective, with the long ball and people running faster and breaking records in the Olympics and all that, I certainly see the appeal.
I agree. From a professional standpoint, I'm against it, I would say, from the perspective of just keeping the purity of the game, so to speak, however pure that is, But as Jason mentioned, I think from the entertainment standpoint, we push these athletes to such a level, and these organizations put so much money into these players that you sort of have to expect them to continue to raise the bar and better themselves. Like if it's not PEDs, the organization's pushing drugs into these guys to get them back on the playing field at a faster time because, hey, that's their paid horse. They got to get that guy playing. So, I mean, even if they're not willingly taking it, just by being a part of an organization, you're going to be exposed to some of those factors that others wouldn't be. So, I mean, I'm against it from a knowledge stand base. If you're just going out there, pump yourself up and go. But I just don't really see how you could exclude it from any professional level at this point.
Yeah, I think that from a professional athlete standpoint, unless the culture changes, it's always going to be a reality. Right. As long as you're, paid to perform, and you're getting, the expectation is for you to break records, run faster, be stronger, hit harder. As long as that's an expectation with millions of dollars attached to it, and that's what the fans want to see, it will always be a reality of the situation. Period.
Right.
So, that's it for episode 5. Feed Me, Fuel Me. You can catch us at Feed Me, Fuel Me. Check us out at feedmefuelme.com. We're going to start attaching some blogs and whatnot, as well as some more details about the show in the show notes. So be sure to check us out every Friday at feedmefuelme.com.
There you have it, crew. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to check out the full show notes and get connected with us at feedmefuelme.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to all of our information and social media on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at feedmefuelme. We're looking forward to connecting with each and every one of you. If you found this episode inspiring in any way, please rate, comment, and subscribe so we can continue on this journey together. Also, share it with your family and friends on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, or any other social platforms that you use. We really appreciate you spending your time with us today and allowing us to join you on your journey. We would love to hear your feedback on this episode and future episodes as well. We would like to end this episode with a positive quote by Edmund Lee. Surround yourself with the dreamers and the doers, the believers and thinkers, but most of all, surround yourself with those who see greatness within you, even when you don't see it in yourself. Thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you on the next episode.